So sometimes, like with aquarium keeping, if you're patient, you get the rewards later.
Yeah. This man met Takashi Amano.
Yeah,
that is so cool.
First time I met him was in 1994.
Hello everyone, Ryan from Avatar Aquatics. Welcome to another video. Today we're doing a fish room tour of my friend's fish room. I also brought some microworm cultures for him, and as well as my breeding group of cardinals. There's about 5 in there. We're gonna go inside and see what he has in store for us. Let's get started. Introduce yourself first. Tell us about your photography and everything.
Hi. Well, I've been spending a lot of time doing macro photography and more recently photography using the microscope that Ryan inspired me to get. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been definitely a preoccupation for many months now. So we're starting in the window area of this room, and this is where I keep a couple live food cultures. So on the top shelf are 2 Paramecium cultures, and on the bottom are my mainstay Daphnia cultures that I use to repopulate a larger culture that I keep outside. But these are either the same as the one that Todd has, or there's another Daphnia magna type. So these Paramecium cultures have been going since April, and they're just the simplest things to keep going. You just add some replacement water occasionally and throw in some dry oats that decompose, and I'll feed tanks that may have fry without knowing for sure that there are fry in there. Like this tank where I keep clown killies, there are a couple small ones in there, and I'm hoping that there's, you know, lots of babies that will soon appear, and it doesn't hurt to have food to get them started.
Well, let's talk about your crypts, dude. Is this is this like CO2 injected?
No,
this
not
is
at all.
Wow.
This is the simplest crypt tank.
Look at that.
And it's a crypt called Cryptocoryne Tank, which is, in my experience, it prefers to grow in a monoculture. And I've tried growing this in high-tech conditions with CO2, and it just doesn't do as well. It doesn't also like the competition of other plants. I think it's a very slow-growing crypt, and in CO2 enriched environment with higher light, you're trying to force the growth, and it just doesn't do as well.
You can see it's like grown by runners, but then there's also one that's like growing in your sponge, and it's actually gone through your sponge
for a while.
Come up on this side here.
There was a huge group on that side that I pulled out a couple months ago. So this is Hedopterandria formosa, which is also called the least killifish, but it's not a killifish.
Where is it from?
This one is native to the eastern United States.
Do they breed like, are they egg layers?
They're Livebearers. So the largest one is a female, and the males.
You mean that one in the back there?
Yeah, so that's a female, and the other ones similarly sized are all females. The male, that's a male right there. So the males don't get big at all. Wow. And the males and the juveniles are very similar size, so you just have to look for the gonopodium to be able to tell whether you have a male or not.
And then the gonopodium is that kind of fin on the bottom.
Right, it's a modified anal fin,
kind of like a guppy, right?
Exactly, it's the same. All Livebearers have some variation of that fin, which they use to impregnate the female. Now, just for contrast, this tank has a non-native relative called the Neoheterandria elegans, which is also called the tiger teddy livebearer, and it is even smaller than the Heterandria formosa.
Oh yeah.
This one comes from Mexico.
So do they only get that big? Because that's like what, maybe?
Yeah, that's it.
Barely an inch.
That's
maybe,
the
maybe
largest.
Not an inch at all.
Exactly, it's not even an inch total length. So that the largest one in there is the female, and then the second largest fish in the container is the male.
Tell me more about like these sponge filters that you have on the. I guess this is a ram's horn tank.
Yeah, this is a ram's horn that I got from David Ferguson at the last RAS meeting, and these are the ones that he's breeding. He has two varieties of them that have the interesting color. He has the orange and he has the blue.
Do you have like multiple species of emperor tetras in here?
No, there's only one.
It's
that
just
I'm
one?
aware of. Yeah, there are two species of emperors. There's a Leopoldi from named after Rosario Laporte, and there's another one, Palmeri. I can't remember. So there is another species of emperors. Maybe these are the Palmeri.
Look at that one. So cool. I started with like 3 males and 1 female, and they've like already like repopulated themselves. I've doubled in number.
This is a tank that I set out.
This is like my
for,
favorite one here.
For what do you call those loaches?
Hillstreams?
Hillstream Loaches. So there's
One right there.
2 or 3 different types in here, and at times I've seen some really small fish, so I think that they're producing and they're breeding, but I've never been able to confirm that. I have to basically tear the tank down to see, because I think they're hiding, for the most part, they're hiding in the rocks.
There's one down there too.
So the 3 different kinds that may still be the adults are the dark one that has the little white spots on it, which is Gastromyzin loach, and there's some Sewellia that have a different pattern, but I don't see them at the moment.
And you have a wave maker. Helps with the flow, I guess, for the hill streams.
John Hamm and some other people have determined that to assist with the breeding, if you have that flow in the tank, any eggs that are produced will get blown into the rocks, and then the babies will be able to develop safely, in that rock pile. And that's the purpose of that flow.
I see. So what is that bolbitis in the back?
Yes.
I heard it grows like super duper slow.
It does. It grows extremely slowly, but it also has the super advantage that you could leave it in your tank and you don't have to do anything to the tank for months, even years, because it might take that long to fill up a tank to the point where you have to remove it. So this fish, I'm going to put some food in there because this is a unbelievable fish. It'll come out.
That's the cue for me to take out my phone and stuff.
It's not guaranteed that they're going to come out because they're basically a nocturnal fish. And the first year that I had them, I only saw
those
them.
The things on the top?
Yeah, that's it. So they start schooling around, and there's about a dozen or more that are in this tank, and they'll start coming out. One tracks the others, and they breed inside those little tubes.
Oh, so wait, are those things in the tubes the same species?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just that some of the ones in the tube may be sitting on eggs, and that's why they're not going to come out.
That's pretty cool. So you got like some Plecos in there too?
Yeah, I got some L144s.
Oh, and then some Corys in the back?
Yeah, that's right. So I have to write the stuff on the glass to remind me what's in there. The common name of that fish is the honeycomb cat, and the scientific name is Duranglinus perugae.
I see. Where did you get these fish? I don't see them getting sold in any fish
I got them about 3 years ago as 6 juveniles when I was speaking up in Columbus, Ohio. Guy up there is like a specialist in woodcats, and I was visiting his fish room, his basement, and I saw these things swimming around. I said, you know, can I get some of those from you? And he gave me a group to bring home. And the first year I had them, as they were developing, I never saw them during the day at all. Just to observe their behavior, I used to look at their tank with a flashlight at night. But after they either increased in their numbers after they bred and got some more to join the group, or they just had some age on them, they started coming out during feeding time. It was very disappointing to have an interesting fish like that you never saw. So sometimes, like with aquarium keeping, if you're patient, you get the rewards later.
Yeah.
So this is a tank where last week these fish that I got from Gerald Potter, they're a relatively rare South American fish called Equidens mete that he's kept for about 10 years. I have only had them 2 weeks in total, so I've been feeding them what I had available, which are large pellets. They don't seem very interested in flake food. They need something big enough to
like actually
really
chomp on.
Yeah, really chomp on. And Gerald said he was feeding them cat food, and they bred for him 2012 or 2013, and he just wasn't able to deal with them right now, so he offered them to me and see if I could spawn them and allow me to pass the fish along to other RAS members. So they spawned last Sunday, within a week of going into this tank, and prior to spawning I divided the tank. There's another 2 in that side. And he had 4 fish in 2 different tanks, and one of these and one of these was his spawning pair, but when I put all 4 together, the male paired up with this female, and if you look closely, her egg tube is starting to emerge.
Okay, she's not very cooperative. But I like those little like bars behind their eyes. It looks kind of like tears. Yeah.
So they laid eggs on Sunday. On Tuesday, I thought all the eggs had hatched, but then I went out of town for a couple days. So I set up my remote camera, my spy cam, and I was able to monitor what was going on. And it looked like they may have had some babies hatched out, and they were, guarding them, and then after a couple days, nothing. They never became free swimming.
So you said you separated with this like egg crate here?
Yeah.
So do you think maybe the baby like might have gotten past it?
I don't think so. The babies wouldn't have been able to go through there. Plus, once the babies hatch out, they usually, now since I was only watching this on the remote camera, I can't say with certainty, but usually with cichlids, it takes 2 to 3 days for them to hatch, and another 2 to 3 days for them to become free swimming. So after 6 days, I was expecting, a group of free swimming babies. And once they're free swimming, they usually stay as a close group. And you just see this characteristic cloud of babies, and that was not evident in any of the pictures. So those are sturbe cories, corridor sturbi. They are ones that I spawned a year or two ago, so there's two different sizes in there. So I attempted to get all the fish on one side except for the spawning pair, but it's not 100% perfect sealing.
Yeah, there's one under the...
Yeah, so some of the fish made its way over, and prior to putting in these big cichlids, I had 2 dozen dwarf rainbowfish, Plecos were in here, and I left 4 because I just couldn't get them out, and I figured, well, we'll see what happens. Well, the 4 are not there, and then I think they got eaten.
Oh no.
But it was part of it was just an experiment. I had more than I needed of those Plecos, so I wasn't that concerned about it, and I was curious to see whether or not the cichlids would even eat. Or, they didn't show any evidence of chasing them, but maybe when it got to the point where the babies had hatched out, the fish became much more protective of their babies. And it is possible that those Plecos picked off all the babies, and then the fish got annoyed and ate them.
What are those cories down there?
Okay, so these are duplicarius, and the ones in this tank are Adolphi, and they look almost identical. In this tank, there are 2 baby cories.
Yeah, I see them then.
See the 2? They're slightly different sizes, and I've only seen 2. So I have a lot of cories that I'm intending to breed, but I haven't really been paying attention to when they lay eggs. And typically, you're supposed to remove the eggs.
Oh, they
want to raise the babies. And occasionally, with some species or some random number of eggs will survive and grow up without removing them, like in that tank.
So is there like a reason why you're doing like sand in some of these and then you've got like gravel on the other?
No, it should be, that's what I had in that tank at the time, so I just added a little bit of sand. Cories really prefer sand. They like to root around in the substrate, and this stuff could get resuspended because the clay over time breaks down and you get this mud on the very bottom layer.
I see. Okay, I see you have some German blue rams here. So one of my favorite fish. Do they spawn for you?
This pair has spawned once, never really produced any fry. Have another pair that I only have a male remaining that's in with the Leopoldi. And I have some offspring of one of my spawns in this tank up there. I have a pair of German blues with these.
Are those the banded sunfish?
These are the black banded sunfish. So these are from last year's spawn. And indoors they grow really slow. I'm just not getting them a constant supply of food that they need to grow quickly.
Dude, I'm just loving like all the moss, and this is like some subwasser tang or something.
Yeah, this is the Foster Tang.
Yeah. That's so cool. Like
There's some on here too.
it must have taken you years to grow that out, because my Java moss, like the Java moss grows a lot, but that and the Java ferns don't grow as much.
Yeah, probably was several years to
like even
get to that quantity, because like you said, it does grow really slow. But the Süßwasser tank, I believe, grows faster than the Java fern or the Java moss, because at times I'll have to like remove big clumps of it, because otherwise it'll appear like it wants to take over the tank. So this tank is interesting for a couple of reasons. So there's there's 3 species of fish in there. 2 are from Africa. The large catfish in the back is Synodontis angelicus. And you want to guess how old it is?
That's a big fish, like maybe like that big.
Yeah, it's probably 8 inches.
I don't know, 5 to 8 years. 40 years?
I've owned that fish.
Oh my god.
For 40 years. I mean, I've had it in my personal possession. And I had 2 that I kept when I moved them into this tank. They
way off.
One killed the other one. So the other fish in here are buffalo. They're called buffalo heads. Cryptocoryne Tank, and they are just a fish that doesn't have a strong swim bladder, so they're like goby-like. It's just hanging around the bottom.
They've got an interesting face.
And if it wasn't for the BL144s, the blue-eyed ancestors, this could be called a biotope, African biotope tank, because
The bolbitis.
the bolbitis is Africa. The buffalo heads are from Africa, and I think they're all from the Congo region.
That's a cool tank, dude. I see we have some here. Let me switch to my phone for these like smaller tanks. So I see these are like the cherry fish or
So
cherry shrimp.
They are
Got some Ricefish in there too.
That's what they're all the same. They're all what are they called? I'm not sure what the common name is.
It looks like some sort of like chili with Ricefish or something. Exclamation,
Yeah, that's
strawberry.
what it is. Okay, so they are raspberries. They're borax, B-O-R-A-R-A-S, borax. And these are 2 species. These are the redder ones, and this is the more common one.
Because I heard that they breed pretty easily if you give them like a lot of cover. But they're so popular that all the stores are always out.
Both of these I got in 2 different orders from Wet Spot. And when they came in, they were just super tiny, less than half the size they are now, and they may be approaching adult size. Yeah, this is a Acara out of Okita. It's used to be part of a Acara, and then it was split up as the only species in this particular new genus. It's from South America. There's these smaller, darker ones are breeding females, and that's another female, and these are the two males, and then there's 2 kind of unidentified fish in here, and they've spawned several times, but I'll get eggs that will last no more than 36 to 48 hours, and I believe my pH and water conditions are not right. I think I need to establish something closer to your cardinal tetra BLACKWATER conditions in order for the eggs to survive. So they may be too much mineral content in here for the eggs to actually hatch out.
So how do you like hatch baby brine?
Ah.
Is that the hatchery?
Yeah, so this is my hatchery. So I was putting some mild bleach in here just to clean out all the gunk that had built up from just not even cleaning the last batch of eggs out of it. And the brine is 6 tablespoons of salt, half teaspoon of baking soda.
What kind of salt do you use?
Cheapest salt that I could find. Any cheap non-iodized salt.
Like, do you use like kosher salt or like aquarium?
I'll buy stuff that's cheaper than kosher salt.
Ocean.
Like I'll buy, for example, like this, which is about $3 for 4 pounds, and kosher salt is about $1 or $2 more expensive per box. And you know, this is not necessarily 100% pure for human consumption, but brine shrimp it's
fine. Yeah.
So then I bubble some air through there, and of course I've kept this thing so long that my tube filled up with water. So
It'll have to work its way through that first, yeah.
Yeah. So I got my bubbling going, and then I'll add which it's the last of this batch, so
Almost out.
yeah. Well, I keep the rest in the freezer.
They do store quite a long time in the freezer.
Yeah. Some people say that you shouldn't freeze them, you should refrigerate them, but I haven't found any strong evidence.
Yeah, that's where I put mine too, in the freezer.
Yeah. So
how do you take them out? Or do you have to use a siphon, or do you just
what I
undo
do
this?
is all the hatched eggs float to the top, and this little tube on the bottom provides a bigger area for the hatched shrimp to collect in. And then what I'll do is I'll siphon them out with this kind of a hose. So I'll put this down in the bottom. I let it settle for about 2 minutes, and all the shrimp settle down here, and some unhatched eggs collect along the neck, and all the hatched eggs are floating on the top. And then just siphon it out, and I set a timer so that I don't siphon it out 100%, because sometimes I'll forget. I have to time everything. If I don't time it when I'm filling tanks or whatever.
So you made that tube yourself, right? It looks like a
These
DIY
are called
project, or?
hurricane tubes, and you could buy them. I saw this on YouTube or somewhere on the web where someone suggested that as their method for raising the shrimp, and I thought it made sense to me. So I bought these connectors and these little tubes that screw in to the bottom of the soda bottle and extend the bottom of the bottle.
So were the hurricane tubes like made for baby brine?
No, they're made for something entirely different. I think they're called hurricane tubes. There's some kind of experiments that kids do which allows stuff to swirl around and creates a hurricane effect.
Did you put the gasket in here?
At the very bottom?
Yeah.
What did I do? No, I just drilled. These are self-tapping valves.
I see.
So I drilled whatever hole size those valves require and just screwed it in, and it didn't require anything else to seal it.
Oh, it's a good system there.
So these are
Rainbow fish, maybe?
a variety of Japanese ricefish. They're called blue daisy ricefish, or Daisy's blue ricefish. These are all females. They're not, but what's really interesting about them is the way their eyes just sort of glow.
Yeah, I feel like I have a thing for this type of color in my fishes, like neons. cardinals, and like whenever something like that happens, I'm just like, this fish is beautiful. I love that color.
So are you
into
plants very much?
Yeah, I mean, I have 2 like planted tanks.
Okay. So this plant in the middle that I just put in there yesterday is a species of Kabamba. And I'm trying to identify what species it is. And yesterday, and I kept some in one of my indoor tanks and some outdoors. And yes, in both tanks, the plant started to flower. Almost identical within a day. And here's the flower. Let me see if I can get it to face this way. So this plant, I believe, is a species called Kabamba paleoformis, and these are flower buds that haven't opened yet, that you could see from the top or from the bottom. And I'm trying to key out the characteristics of the flower. The normal Kabamba caroliniana is green, and there's two other variations of it that have an entirely different looking flower. So that's why I think this one might be that other species, the paleoformis.
Is this the blood vomit?
Yeah.
In the front?
Yeah, the blood vomit that I had to get when I said, what is BV stand for? It's blood vomit, and that's, some translation, direct translation in Chinese.
But like, the scientific name is what, like Blixka japonica, I think?
That's Blixka japonica in the back.
Is that? Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is something else that it doesn't roll off my tongue.
Cool.
This plant here has an interesting story. It's an undescribed species that its common name is pearlgrass, and there's a native similar plant that's native to the U.S. that has a different leaf pattern that also has adopted the name pearlgrass.
This man met Takashi Amano.
Yeah,
that is so cool.
First time I met him was in 1994 when I was on a business trip to Hong Kong, when we were passing through Tokyo, and another member of the Aquatic Garden Association offered to meet me and show me around the local area. And to my surprise, he says, well, I got a surprise for you. I bought tickets on the bullet train, and tomorrow we're going to Niigata to visit this new guy that is really doing some fantastic things with photography and plants. And so we went out to his, at that time he had just a pet shop, aquarium store. And then a year later, I got invited back by him to participate in a conference he was hosting in Niigata.
Wow.
But this pearlgrass, if you're familiar with a website called Flowgrow,
No.
it's a German. It's affiliated with a German company called Aquasibi, and it's one of the best plant identification sites that I'm aware of. And on that site, it shows a picture of this plant, and part of its story is it mentions my bringing it back from Japan as an undescribed species, and it's known in the hobby as Hemianthus species pearlgrass, Amano pearlgrass, quotes Amano pearlgrass.
Is there CO2 in here?
Yes, this is the only tank in this garage that is running CO2.
And I'm assuming that's not your CO2 tank?
That's correct. This is the
Okay.
CO2 tank here.
Oh, I see. There's a smaller one here.
Yeah. So this tank is, it's overkill for this size tank, but I had a 20-gallon tank sitting around not being used, so I decided I would connect it up.
So are you using, I guess maybe it's like a internal or canister filter, and then you're inline diffusing it
There's
into
an
the...
inline CO2 diffuser
I see.
that is connected to the return pump.
What happened to the males?
There
Are
was
there
one
males?
male and it died.
Oh,
The tank
no.
was getting too hot. I tried to retrofit this with additional lighting. I was trying to introduce some
LEDs.
some LEDs, some red blue LEDs, and these things are small, but they draw a lot of power, and they get hot. And right now the tank is pretty much room temperature, but when I had those strips going, the water got to close to 90 degrees.
Oh, wow.
So I think these Ricefish just were not,
I don't know if they would appreciate that.
they did not appreciate it. Okay, so I have one switch that controls that whole bank, because otherwise you get the reflection of
That's true.
one thing on the other, and it makes it really hard to see. So these are a relatively uncommon species of angelfish called Leopoldi.
They've got like some extra bands on them.
So they're not, they have a different shape than
they're more
Scalari.
triangular.
Yeah, definitely more triangular. Their fins are not as high, and their body comes to, it's almost like a isosceles triangle.
Is this your favorite tank?
It's one of my favorite tanks, yeah. I'm
This would be
hoping-
mine.
I'm hoping to get these guys to spawn,
for
but
you?
they haven't really been cooperative.
How much are you feeding them?
Probably not enough. I haven't really been trying to feed them special conditioning food, so they just get mostly get some pellet food, some granular like tetramin bits. I had the male, that's the surviving male. The female, I had several spawns of German blue rams in this tank.
Dang, you should have told me before. I have an extra female.
Ah. Would you like the male?
So I have a spawn growing out. They're about like 1.5 inches now. I have more than I really do need right now. I could have brought the female today. Figure something
So this
out.
tank, someone gave it to me, and then I decided I would buy a stand that will hold it.
Yeah, I
and
was
then-
gonna ask you about these racks because they look really sturdy, and like, where did you get them, and like, what was the process of building this fish room here? Because I see there's a lot of stuff here that, and everywhere really, that
the room
not thought about.
kind of, we could have a separate conversation about that, but this particular rack, they have racks like this, very similar to this, that you can get at Lowe's or Home Depot. But I needed one both for this section and for that section that was 5 feet long. And 5 feet, I had to order it and have it shipped in from a company called
Global.
So, yeah. And what's nice about them is they're not as bulky. They're just as strong as the ones you can get at Home Depot, but they're not as bulky. So you could pack more into a smaller space, and they also come in different sizes.
What kind of rainbow fish are they?
They're Plecos or dwarf neon rainbows.
Are they like, they look kind of like albino, but I know they're not.
This particular, those specimens are not the greatest examples of the Plecos rainbow. Plecos rainbow is supposed to have a very iridescent blue body, but those were raised, they just weren't the highest quality. I didn't raise those myself, someone gave them to me. So this is one of my 4 Tanganyika fish tanks.
These the shell dwellers?
Yeah, so this is one of the shell dwellers called Sunspot brevis, Neolamprobis. And I believe that's a male and female. I haven't gotten any babies yet.
What are those?
This is a different variety of ricefish, which is called the Indian ricefish, or Zias cancena. These are not the most quality.
I like this one.
Yeah, so that's this Luminatus that are in here are the same species as the ones in that other tank, but it's bit easier to see them when they're a little bit younger. So this tank that you noted
instantly gravitated to.
It looked like a blackwater tank, and that's because that wood has released lots of tannins, and that little pile of debris on the left are the product of the loricarids gnawing on the wood. So the wood may be whatever's living on the wood that they're eating, and they're digesting and releasing, the cellulose, builds up this huge pile of detritus. When the males go into the shell, into the cave, and they start moving their pectoral fins, that could be an indication that there's some eggs in there that they're providing circulation.
Oh, you're talking about this action right here?
Yeah. Right. But I checked it recently and I didn't see any eggs in there. But
is there a reason why this one has like spikes coming off of it?
Yes, that's an indication of a breeding male. So when the males get into spawning mode, they develop that bumpy, spiky caudal area.
It's pretty cool.
Caudal peduncle.
So is this a pretty acidic tank then? Like in terms of water parameters?
I would assume so, because I don't do a lot of water changes on it, and just from the appearance of it, it's got to be acidic, but I haven't tested it.
Do you find issues with like your ram's horns in there?
With
suffering?
Ram's horns?
Yeah. Because my snails don't survive in my Tetra tanks.
Interesting.
My well, I have the pond snails, and they don't like it.
So the Tetra, the low pH that you keep the Tetras in, that low pH may also not support a lot of vegetative growth.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I have like Java moss in there. That's probably the only thing that can survive.
So it's possible that
even
the snails might be starving from the low nutrients or nothing to really eat. You could try, I mean, this would be an interesting experiment to see whether or not it's the pH or the food. You could try like adding some algae pellets and see if that will keep your snails alive. What happens to the shells?
They just die within like a week.
Okay.
Don't know why.
Well, if they die within a week, then it does suggest that it's the pH as opposed to lack of food, because I don't think a snail would starve in a week.
Yeah, like, I mean, I have a bunch of detritus in there, which I would assume they would have something to eat.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll feed baby brine, and the ones that's left over should theoretically get eaten. by the snails.
It's possible that these catfish are actually the main food sources that would. Because look how
That one's like
it is.
clean out.
It's really. Here's the adults. They come up and feed right out of my hand. So that's one of the adults.
Oh, you've got
right
a
there.
small one down there.
Yeah, and there's lots of little ones that were born this year. So there's as many as 7 adults in the tank, but I think there are only 5 that survived last winter.
Can I stick this in here?
Yeah, you can. That way you could see what's going on with the water.
So do you filter this? I see you've got like a bubbler.
I put the filter on there to clear up the water a couple months ago, and I just left the filter in place. But last year I didn't have a filter on this tank. I mean, once
Does it grow a bunch of algae? Because that's what happens to mine.
I get some hair algae, this mossy stuff, and that's about it.
And I also see that you like put it into the ground.
Yeah.
Is that to like help with the heat?
Yeah. It helps insulate, keeps the water a little bit warmer over the winter. So it's
So do those fish overwinter?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, these adult fish have been in this container for over 2 years.
So Neil, you have a Facebook group that you post your photography photos on. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So there's a Facebook page that I set up called Freshwater Miniatures. And I started posting some of the close-up macro photos that I was taking of, developing fry and close-ups of fish and invertebrates and interesting things I found in my tank. So I set up that site as a place to showcase some of those results. I was hoping that some other people might post similar interesting things of small things that you need. You know,
Yeah.
it's not easy to see. And I also have a YouTube channel that I established about over 10 years ago, where I started posting some miscellaneous videos, not necessarily of microscopic stuff, but you know, fish breeding, some plant related stuff. The history of the Synodontis catfish that is now 40 years old.
Yeah, so I will put your name, like the link to your YouTube and your Facebook in the description of the video that's going to come out.
Sure, you can do that.
And then
that'd be great.
that way you're going to get more viewers. But this has been awesome. Thank you, Neil, for taking me around your fish
I
room.
was glad to have you here.
Yeah.
Over the last year, we haven't had as many visitors
Yeah.
as I would have liked.
All right, so thank you guys so much. We'll see you guys next time.